KTM's done everything they wanted to do for 2017. They've launched the new RC390 and the 200. They've shown us 3 Dukes, and today we are riding 2. The 200 and the brand new 250 that enters the line. KTM is still saving the 390 for later.
The 200 Duke is where the KTM story started in India, and it remains their single most popular product. It is also their most affordable model, so updating it was a delicate issue. KTM India's solution is shrewd. They've little more than changed the graphics and updated the engine to BS4, but they have done so without moving the price, while the KTM 250 arrives and the 390 goes up in price. This allows KTM to keep their entry point stable, while almost everything else will become expensive as it goes BS4. As a direct result, the 200 feels familiar.
Lots of good feelings when you ride the KTM 200 Duke, because this is a very familiar motorcycle, and honestly, not much has changed. They've changed the graphics, it's a BS4 engine, and the only other thing we need to know is that this thing is 5 kilos heavier than the last one, although peak torque and power remain the same. That means when we test it against a stopwatch, this is going to be a slightly slower motorcycle, but honestly, when you're riding it, you cannot tell. But what you can tell when you ride this and the 250 back to back is how the Duke as a motorcycle has changed. The 2017 250 is very similar to the 390, obviously in the way it looks, although you get one in white, but you will only buy the 390 in orange. So the bodywork is similar. The headlight looks the same, but this is a halogen. The only LEDs are in here in the tail lamp. You will notice the exhaust obviously, and also new is the bolt-on subframe, or as KTM calls it, the split trellis frame. Apart from that, suspension same as the 390, but tires and brakes same as the 200.
But the design is shared with the 390 and it looks rather good. The new tank extensions and the dinky little tail make the motorcycle look sleeker, while the exposed subframe makes it look lighter. The sharpness that is normal in KTM and Kiska designs remains, but the look is fresh and, more importantly, upmarket. In function, the 13.5-litre tank extends range, while the longer seat promises more space. Overall, the KTM 250 looks better finished and more expensive. And that's not just a visual thing. The brakes, meters and the engine electronics come from the 200, but the design and suspension come from the 390. In fact, it's the new 390's engine that the 250 is based on, and that includes the slipper clutch too.
The 250 engine makes 30 PS and has more relationship with the 390 engine than the 200 engine. But to me, the two big differences are, this thing makes torque, and when you really rev it, like really close to the red line, you realize that unlike the old engines, it doesn't need to be done. It's actually a very happy engine at 7, 8, 9,000 RPM. You don't really need to go beyond it. On the flip side, you also notice the refinement. This is a much more refined, much smoother engine than the old one. So when you ride the 250, interesting things happen. Well, first of all, you're sitting really far up ahead on the motorcycle, it feels like, and when you look ahead, there's literally no motorcycle in your view. It almost feels like you're floating and there's no motorcycle underneath you. I've felt this before on a couple of motorcycles. It's a nice and a very pleasant sensation, I have to tell you. The other thing is that the suspension seems to have a lot more control and sophistication than the last one. I'm really happy about that. We're at a track, so there aren't too many bumps here really, but it seems to have more control over how it absorbs small and large bumps, and I think that's going to be very interesting, and it's something that I'm looking forward to see on the road test bike out in the real world. At rupees 1.73 lakh ex Delhi, the 250 makes a lot of sense, and if you're in the market for the 200, I would say find the 30,000 rupees more. In EMIs, it's not a lot of money, and get the 250, because clearly the 200 is and feels like an older motorcycle. The 250, the game has just moved on. However, what's even more interesting for me than the 250 itself is how KTM are evolving the Duke, because these motorcycles are less angry and less frantic than the old ones, which should widen their appeal, and yet they're as essentially nutty Austrian machines as we've come to expect from the Duke line. If this is what the new 390 turns out to be like in flavor, this is going to be a very interesting year indeed.